You're listening to Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran Podcast.
Now introducing your host of Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran, the one-man show, Brian Roof.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching Every Day's a Saturday. I am happy to be here as usual, and would just like to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in each and every day and liking the show, sharing it out. You know, I can't appreciate you guys enough. Also, before we get started, make sure you guys are checking on your buddies out there, your friends, your family. Make sure everybody out there is doing well. You know what I mean? Even if they seem well, make sure you check in on them. You know, so let this show and let this reminder be a reminder to you to reach out to someone right now. Give them a call, give them a text, just let them know you're thinking about them and make sure they're doing all right. All right. Before we get going, I hope you guys are enjoying the new format of the show. Here we go. We're going to get ready to see who our next guest is. Here we go.
This is what you'll be watching or hearing today. Interview 63, Frank Demith.
He served his country proud for 28 years in the United States Army.
Author of a book of vital interest. And let's go.
What's going on, Frank? Welcome to the
brother.
show, brother. Hey, man.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I'm excited to have you on and get to hear and know all about you. Man, you served 28 years honorably in the Army. That is crazy. So let's get to know all about Frank, where you grew up, why you chose the Army and you weren't ready to be a Marine yet. And let's get to know all about what's going on with you, man.
Well, most people that I know would say I was in the Army because I passed the test, but that's not right. I love Marines, but I grew up in Chicago on the South Side, so it was a kind of a watch what you're doing and keep your head on a swivel from the day I was in high school. And my father worked in a steel mill, and I knew if I stayed there, I'd be working right next to him, and that just didn't seem like something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I had a buddy of mine, and he joined the Army, and he needed someone to go in with him to get an extra stripe. So he went through everybody else and finally got to me because he didn't think I'd go. And I was only 17. I mean, my parents had to sign the enlistment paperwork because, I couldn't sign it being 17. And so I talked to the recruiter and I said, yeah, sounds like a great idea. He says, oh, well, we got to come by and have your parents sign the paperwork. I said, oh, really? Okay. I knew they weren't going to sign. So I wasn't worried. He shows up, puts the paperwork on the table, and my parents are like fighting over who's going to sign it first. So they sign it, and he walks out and he goes, okay, we got to go down to the processing center. We got to figure out what you're going to do. And I said, well, I know what I want to do. He says, what's that? And I said, well, I just want to go in and get enough money for college, and then I'm going to come back out and go to college. So I want to go in as a musician. And he said, going in as a musician, you got to pass a test for that. And the bandmaster gives it to you, and they don't cut any slack. I said, okay, give me a shot. So he set it up. And I was playing professional music before I went into the Army. I mean,
oh, wow.
It's like, yeah, I was in a band and we played around at some parties and stuff and did some things. So I went in, and of course I passed the audition. And I came back out, and the bandmaster told him I had passed, and he about dropped his jaw. And so we went back, and I enlisted in music.
Yeah.
And I got to basic training, and I was wearing PFC stripes because that's what you got for the program I went under. So
went in what is that an Army E2? E3?
Yeah, E3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went in, and the drill sergeants were all over me. Why are you wearing that? I said,
Yeah.
well, I had stripes for skills. And what kind of skill could you have? I said, well, I play in the band. Oh, a flute
Oh.
tutor. And I'm like, oh. And then all
Oh,
through
man.
basic training, whenever I saw them, I had to hum the Budweiser song.
Oh, gosh.
So, every time. And so I got him though. When we were about ready to finish basic, we were out at the range and I had already qualified. So I'm hauling ammo up at firing points. And they're standing in the back of the line talking to the company commander. So I took my little empty ammo cans and walked up there and I made sure I walked right past them. When I got about 2 feet, I started doing the Budweiser song. And the commander's like, soldier, what are you doing? I said, well, it's the Budweiser song, sir. He says, I know what it is. Why are you doing that? And the drill sergeants are behind him going. And I said, well, the drill sergeants tell me I got to do it every time I see them. He says, oh, they did. And I walk off and I could hear them hounding them. And we lined up to do the march back to the barracks. And the drill sergeant's like, Demith. Yes, drill sergeant. Rounders. Yes, drill sergeant. It was worth it. Then they had us, they took about 12 of us out of the formation one day and they said, you guys have to go down and take a test. Well, nobody asked. I mean, we were getting out of training. So we went down and we took this couple hour long test. And the next week they called about 8 of us out of that group back and they said, you got to line up and go and fill out some paperwork. So we start marching off down the road with the drill corporal. And one of the guys goes, hey, Corporal, where are we going? Oh, you knuckleheads are going down to fill out some paperwork to go to the military academy. 3 of them dropped out of the formation, went back to training.
Oh, geez. The other like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I was like, nah, I just wanted to do this for a couple of years and go back to being a civilian. So this was right after the all volunteer army started. I mean, 2 or 3 years. So I went off to AIT. And I'm out at Little Creek Amphibious Base and going to school and doing stuff. And I was about 4 or 5 weeks in. It was a 23-week long course. And my supervisor grabs me and he says, hey, the commander wants to talk to you in his office. I'm like, ah, crap. What did I do? Like, I didn't know. So we walked down there and I report to the commander and he said, do you know why you're here? I said, sir, I don't know. I must have done something wrong, but I don't know what it is. And he started laughing. He says, you got paperwork to go to the prep school for West Point. And I said, what? He goes, well, do you remember taking a test? I said, yeah. He says, okay, well, you're going. But the problem is you got to finish your MOS training before you go. Because if you don't get through it, you got to come back into the army. You got to have an MOS. So they sat down and worked out the course where they got me through that course, a 23-week long course in like 15 weeks. And I was busting my tail. I mean, I was doing stuff. I'd get up right after breakfast. I'd go before formation and start. And then I was there, went and ate dinner and came back that night and worked. And I had my own little graduation in the commander's office. They sent me off to prep school. I went through there and then I went to the academy and got out and I graduated right in about the middle of my class. I didn't have any bad parts or good parts and just right in the middle where I wanted to be. I went into air defense and went off to Fort Stewart. It was my first assignment. I was a shore rad guy. Chaparral, Vulcan, and Red Eye. And then they sent me off after that, and I got hooked up with a Patriot battalion that was just activating, and I joined them as the Battalion S4. Went overseas to Germany, and then
what's the year? What's about the year time frame of all this stuff, kind of?
Well,
Jeez,
I
man.
went back to my advanced course at Fort Bliss. I don't know what it's called now. I don't keep track. I know
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not Fort Bliss anymore, but who the hell
yeah,
knows?
yeah. They've done a whole bunch of base alignments and stuff. Yeah, and renaming.
Yeah, my God, people are so thin-skinned. I just can't. It drives me crazy sometimes.
Boom! I tell you.
Yeah, whatever.
Uh, right.
Call it whatever you want. It's still Fort Bliss. So
Exactly.
I went there and for my advanced course, and that was in 86.
Okay.
And there wasn't that many Patriot battalions fielded at that time. So I hooked up with one that was just getting ready to do their certification training. That was 18 weeks long, and we were in the field every week for at least 3 or 4 days. And we do drills and training and everything. And then we went overseas in around November. And I was one of the first ones over because I was the S4. I had to sign for all the buildings and make sure all the equipment, because what they do with the Patriot units, or they did back then, you would move as an entire battalion to include all the equipment, the live Patriot missiles, everything. It was all sent over together.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so
They
they
saved our
spent,
asses in 2003 when I was in over in the Middle East. And
yeah, well, it's a good system. It's
yeah,
a it's a lot better than the one I started out with.
they
The
definitely saved our
Vulcan,
ass. I could tell you that much.
well, short story on the other unit I was in, the Chaparral Vulcan. Um, the Chaparral was okay. It was a missile system. The Vulcan was just a big stinking 20 millimeter gun on a chassis.
Oh shit.
It only had 1,500, 2,000 rounds. And
Man, those things were gone fast.
oh yeah,
Oh
and then you had to run for the woods and reload. And so
man.
whoever you were protecting was defenseless because you were back there hand cranking rounds into the
Shit.
gun.
We've come a long way. We've come a
Yeah.
long way in weaponry, haven't we? Shit.
So here I am, this dirt guy, running around in the mud and everything. They're going into a Patriot outfit that's like it's like going from a Tandy computer to a modern computer today. And they had all those rules and everything. It had air corridors and this and that, and elevation levels and airplane types, and oh God, it was just enough to drive you crazy. So I made it in there. I did a good job as the S4. My battalion commander wanted me to get him a red carpet for his office
Oh
in
gosh.
Germany. I couldn't find one to save my life. And
I know.
it's like I was ready to buy one.
Yeah, you better go hand make one. Shit, man.
Yeah, it's like I can't find a red carpet anywhere. It's like
Gosh.
so the funny part was one of the battery commanders was going to change out. His time was up as a commander, and we were in a meeting one day, and I'm sitting there, in the staff chair, and the commanders are all up at the front table with the battalion commander. And one by one, all the commanders are turning around to me and saying all this stuff that's bad with the supply room, with the S4 section. I'm like, damn, what the hell did I do?
Yeah.
And then the battalion commander, after everybody's done, he looks at me, he says, yeah, and I still don't have my damn red carpet. And he's got his coffee cup in his hand, and he looks at me and he says, is that any way for the new commander of Charlie Battery to act? Wham! Throws the mug, breaks everywhere. And I'm like, did he just say I'm going to be a commander, or was he still mad and broke the coffee cup? So I picked up command, and it was a great unit, great bunch of soldiers. I one of the proudest things I ever did. I was their commander for 2 years, and we had a great unit. We still get together for reunions every couple of years
That's
here
outstanding.
stateside. Yeah. So after that, I went back, and the war started in the Gulf, the first war.
Desert
This was
Storm.
in 90, 91.
Right.
And I got orders of all things to be a recruiting company commander.
Oh,
I'm a
jeez.
combat arms commander. We're in Desert Shield. And I know my unit's going to get called up because we were rated the best Patriot battery in the entire 32nd Army Air Defense Command, the whole of Germany. So I just took the orders and I kind of tossed them on my desk. I said, I ain't going. So it got to be about 3 or 4 weeks later, and the brigade calls up the battalion and says, we don't have his clearing papers yet. And the XO calls me and I says, you got to do your clearing papers. I said, I'm not going, sir. We're going to war. He says, no, you're going to the recruiting command. I said, what? You're going to not let me go? He says, well, honestly, we don't have any orders to go either. He said, so they started picking individuals to fill another unit. And they told me I could go be a staff guy. And that's like, I'm a shorehead guy. I don't know all this stuff. That would be a bad thing for me to do. So I never gave up command. So technically, I'm still in command of Charlie Battery now. And, I got on the plane, and man, you talk about bad feeling. I got on that plane, and it was like me and 2 or 3 other people in military, and all the rest were family members flying back to the States. And it's like, God, I feel terrible. But I got there, I did my time in recruiting, and my wife thought that it would be good to have a change of pace. So I put in my paperwork and I got out. But before I got out, I put in for active guard and reserve. And so I was only out for 3 or 4 months. And I get this phone call. Do you want to go to this place, or this place? I said, what? He says, do you want to go here, here, or here? You got to tell me. I said, well, first of all, who are you? And why are you telling me this? He said, well, you got selected to the AGR program, and I need to know where you want to be assigned to. And I said, you got to let me go home and at least talk it over with my wife. And he's like, well, you got till 3:00. So I went and I tried to explain why I was going to be back on active duty. Didn't want to hear it. It's like, you do whatever you want. So I said, okay. Well, I took the assignment, went back on active duty because the military definitely was not our problem. And that played out over the next, year or so, and we got divorced. But I went on active duty in the reserves. That's why I spent the rest of my active duty time. And man, talk about a difference. Oh,
Do you feel like that decision weighed on your divorce kind of at that
no,
is that where it was already kind of
no.
was already,
My wife, my first wife, and my third wife now, was the one I should have married from the very beginning. I met her, but anyways, I have 2 beautiful kids with my first wife. But man, all just argument. I'd come home
yeah.
and I'd come home at night after a long day of being in command, and here's your kid. It's like, can I take my boots off first?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's hard. The whole thing was hard. I mean, we all thought we were going to war, and it was just not, didn't help. But there was far more wrong with the marriage than me being in the Army.
Got it.
So,
Well, it's a good thing you didn't really let her make your decision, right?
I
You
knew. I
Yeah.
knew. That's
Yeah.
why I applied before I got out. I knew.
Right.
So, and I also knew that was where I needed to be. I didn't plan on being a career guy when I was in high school and went in. But the minute I stepped in and started basic training, I knew one way or another I was going to be in. So I went back in, and the reserves was a real trial by fire of my dedication to be in uniform.
Hmm.
And it was just crazy. There's like, I had somebody tell me, when you're on the AGR program, if you stay in a place more than a year, it's bad. And that's what happened to me. I bounced around. I mean, my first assignment was 10 months long. And then I moved. And then the next one was maybe a year and a half. I moved again.
Mm.
And then moved again, moved again. I moved as many times in the reserves as more times than I was in on active duty. And every
So you
time
really got to experience a lot of different bases and stuff like that, I'm sure, huh?
I got to experience quite a
Units,
bit of
people,
bad
and
leadership too.
yep, yeah.
But in fact, I have one officer that I will not name. He took command and suited up for PT, and that was about the only time that he suited up, and ran about less than a quarter mile and fell out.
Wow,
And
that's
so, yeah,
embarrassing.
it
That's
was,
embarrassing.
well, that was the old reserves too, though. I think it's changed now after the global war on terrorism. I think everybody's more in tune with what active duty does and the fact that they need to be ready. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows. And unfortunately, we just lost some reservists overseas. You
yeah,
know, the
yeah,
reservist, they got activated. You know,
yeah,
and that's kind of a norm for the reservists now
yeah.
since
I see
the
back
early
then
two
it,
thousands. Right,
it,
exactly.
it was an oddity to do anything like that. I mean, the only thing we ever did in the first 2 or 3 units that I was in was go to annual training.
Right. Well, and Desert
Um,
Storm wasn't as long as
yeah,
what we got going on now. They wrapped that up pretty quick,
yeah,
because I was liberating Kuwait basically, so it was,
100 hours.
getting them out. Right, exactly. It was a pretty quick deal.
Yeah. Well, there's also a lot of really good people in the reserves. I mean, I don't want anybody to get me wrong, but
No, for sure,
I
absolutely.
saw a lot of really poor leaders the first half of my time in the reserves. Now the other half, I was working with active duty folks. Like I was a reserve operations officer in a recruiting brigade, and that was when 9/11 happened, and they had just sent me to um, anti-terrorism force protection officer course, and I had just come back like 2 months before 9/11, and the deputy brigade commander came down. I was at Fort Knox, and the deputy brigade commander came down to my office, and he said, "What do we do?" And sir, I can give you a bunch of recommendations, but there really was nothing in the course that covered people flying planes in the buildings. I mean, this is way beyond where we were being trained.
Right.
And so we basically considered taking people out of the government buildings, like the federal buildings. A lot of the battalion headquarters were in federal buildings. But it was basically up to the battalion and the brigade commander, and they did what they thought was best. And the recruiting stations didn't really empty out, but it was a really strange time. And then after that, I was a by name request to go to that job in, in the recruiting brigade. This is where it all starts. But actually, it was the unit before that, and I just kept on getting by name requested places because I had a lot of active duty time. And so I went to the recruiting brigade on a by name request, and then I was there, and I went to the Army Reserve headquarters, the personnel headquarters in St. Louis, and they brought me in there to be the strength management officer, and I did that, and then I went down to Waco, and Waco I went to San Antonio to Fifth Army, and
Wow.
then after that I moved out to Pentagon.
You got a count of how many moves you made? I mean, do you actually have a official count?
8 in the Army Reserves.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so my last assignment in the Army Reserves was in the Pentagon.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was by name requested for that one too. And I was an accessions analyst for the Army Reserve and National Guard. And it all falls back on my recruiting time. So, it's funny how things work, because the thing I was probably known for the best wasn't recruiting after I got to the Pentagon. So one day, the commanding general for my section, well, he wasn't a commanding general, he was just a flag officer. He was the DMPM, the Director of Military Personnel Management for the Army. Well, just DM. He was a general, but he comes around and puts a folder on the desk, and I come in and I take a look at it, and I had no idea what it was. So I asked to go and talk to him, and I went in, and he said, "Well, this is a request that came from the Secretary of Defense. It's a tasking, and it started before you got here, but it's not really gotten any traction." He says, "I want you to take it, and I want you to run with it and take it as far as you can." I said, "Yes, sir." Got it. Went back to my desk and started looking at it. And we were being required to recruit green card holders that spoke either Arabic, Dari, or Pashto to enlist, so we could deploy them to support the forces overseas. And that was the part of the 09 Lima Interpreter Translator Program, kind of the base of the book I wrote. So I was the only military guy in the group at the Pentagon that was working on this in the Army. And all the branches were told to do the same tasking, but everybody else said, "No, we ain't doing that." We were the only people that really picked it up and ran with it. And it turned out to be a great program. Originally, we would recruit these people into the inactive ready reserves, then mobilize them for training, and then do further mobilization orders, deploying them overseas.
Wow. How was it going into the Pentagon and stuff like that? I
Oh,
mean,
it was crazy.
because I mean, gosh dang, I mean, for me myself, I love like that kind of like history kind of stuff. And I mean, the Pentagon is kind of very iconic, obviously,
Yeah.
especially 9/11 too. But wow, how was that experience, man?
Well, at the time, I was single, so it wasn't as bad as if I'd been married. But the bad thing was I didn't want to drive through traffic in around DC, because it's a nut house.
Right.
So I got myself an apartment like a block away from the Pentagon, and my boss found out. So I was there early, I was there late. I would say,
Oh,
"Hey, you
man.
go do this."
You live
But
close here, so you're, voluntold.
yeah, you can work 2 extra hours and you'll still get home before we will. So it was fun, but the really eerie thing was, the place I worked at was probably about 200 yards from where the plane came in.
Wow.
And man, I tell you what, you'd walk around there at night and it was just eerie. Walking down the corridors, and they had just opened that portion of the building less than a year after I got there. And man, it just it's just a heavy feeling
Yeah.
to have been in that place in particular. And other than that, you could get lost going to the bathroom. Like
Yeah, it just
the
seems so
all the
huge.
all the
Lot
floors and buildings, and
I'm
I
sure you
mean
gotta,
the
like, back
doors.
into pretty much a lot of different areas, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they would tell you, "Go to this office," and you'd have to figure out where it was, but once you're there a while, it's pretty easy because I mean, you have 5 different rings, and the A ring is the inside,
Oh wow.
and then the E ring, and all the offices on the outside of the Pentagon are mostly higher up folks because they have windows.
Mm.
So I'd have to get up and leave my desk and walk, I don't know, maybe quarter of a mile just to get outside. And it's like if you had claustrophobia, you didn't want to work there.
You're
But man,
locked in, yeah.
it was just a great experience. I loved working
Yeah,
at the
no
Pentagon.
kidding. How long did you get to spend there in the Pentagon?
Oh heck, I was there from 2004 to summer of 2007 when I retired the first time.
Wow.
And then after that, I came back as a contractor and worked there probably another 6 or 7 years as a contractor, which is another completely different, I mean, crazy experience. And it being in the military, well, you contractors, they're just different. And so I worked for all these senior people in the building, and man, I mean, I was a lieutenant colonel when I left, and they just don't see you. I mean, I had one flag officer I worked for. When he came in, the first thing he said was, "I don't like contractors." That's
Because
like,
you're wearing civilian attire at this point in time, right? I mean,
oh yeah, I'm a
yeah,
contractor. It's
right.
like, my God, that was a great opening. This ought to be fun. But yeah, it's I don't know, and that brings me to my second 2.5 years. I was working as a contractor in ASAMNRA, Army Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, and I worked in training, readiness, and mobilization for a civilian, and the civilian was a 15, and he decided he was a very young guy, and his father had been in intel, so he decided he wanted to do some intel stuff because that's what his father had done. And so he got another position and moved out. And we were the language section for ASAMNRA. So we had operational oversight of all the Army language and culture programs.
Wow.
So then it's just me. And there was a full colonel and another GS employee that I fell in with just so I couldn't be in charge. And so they told me that they could bring me on, and I thought I was going to get a civilian slot, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. 2 retirement checks. But then I was informed that they didn't have the bandwidth for another civilian slot, so the only way they could bring me on board was to recall me.
Yeah.
And
They
oh yeah,
hooked you in, right?
so
Oh
I,
man.
I said, well, um, what are my options? They said, well, you can volunteer or we can bring you back involuntarily. I said, well, because it's better if I volunteer. So I volunteered. And then by this time I was married to my third wife. Thank God she had been prior military. But
Understood you a little more.
yeah, so
Right.
yeah, see, that's my only wife now. I mean, I wish I would have met her first, but didn't work out that way. The
Yeah.
I did a year, and that's all the orders were for. And about 11 months into those orders, I got asked to stay another year. So, okay. So I did 2 years. And then the 11th month of my second year, they came and they said, well, we really need you to stay. We still don't have this situation worked out. I said, well, I can't stay another year. It's because the company I worked for was giving me some kind of a stipend from my pay. I mean, I was still work for them, but I was kind of on orders to do this. So they were giving me partial pay, and then I got my regular military pay, but it still wasn't anywhere near what I would make, if I was retired and drawing full retirement pay and my work pay. So I did 6 months, and that was it. And I had to go, and the rest of my time was all as a contractor. That's another story because that's just crazy as heck too.
Yeah, man. I mean, you spent a long time in there, and it, how did you adjust when you got out and stuff once you fully
Once I
retired?
retired for good,
Yeah, yeah.
well, that's kind of how I got to where I am now. The first couple months were great. My wife had a list. I was knocking stuff off left
With
and
all the
right.
honeydews, yeah.
Oh, she was kind of surprised. It's like, how can you do that much? You doing this, doing this, doing this. And then one day I got the lazies, and I sat down on the couch and turned the idiot box on, cranked up the computer, spent my day watching BS shows and searching for stuff on the internet. And that turned into another day, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 weeks. And then finally, it was a little after Christmas, and I was just in a really bad place. I mean, I had lost focus on everything, and it was not a good position to be in mentally, physically, anything. And thank God, I have a classmate of mine who posted a link on LinkedIn. I mean, I've known this guy for 40 years. And so when I saw it, I didn't even think about it. I just clicked on it, and it was a enrollment. So I enrolled. And then once I was enrolled, I figured, well, God, maybe I should look at that. So I went back and I opened it up, and what I enrolled for was a 60-day challenge run by some special forces guys who were retired. And man, it just beat me to dirt. I mean, there was no break, 60 days straight. There was 6 domains you had to complete. Of course,
Wow.
one was physical, and you had both strengthening and aerobic exercise. I mean, like an hour with a rucksack,
Oh, shit.
an hour at the gym. Then you had to read a book a week, cover to cover.
Oof. I
So
would have a
the
rough
thing was,
time right there, right off rip.
no, it's easy, really.
Well,
What you
yeah,
do, you have a list of books, and what I noticed when I looked at that list was they were all these self-development type things, and those
okay.
books are short.
Right, yeah.
Plus, you
Made
could
for
do the
Marines,
Audible.
you know what I mean? They're books made for Marines.
Well, they could do the Audible too. You could do the
Oh,
Audible book too.
even better.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I was reading them, but there's a lot of people they listen to it while they were working out. And but then there was, if you hadn't picked up on it yet, I'm not really a touchy-feely meditation type guy, or I wasn't. But one of the things in there was mindfulness, which included meditation. And by the time the 60 days was up, I was doing 45 minutes
Wow.
meditating. And
Dang.
I'll tell you what a game changer.
Clearing the
It's,
mind, huh?
oh man, and that's the best thing about the challenge that I was on. It addresses mind, body, everything.
Oh, well, that's
Um,
outstanding. I like that.
and I swear if the Veterans Administration hooked into something like this, it would have a huge impact on suicide rates. I mean, because when we go out of the service, especially the people that have been in for a while, you're used to having a purpose.
Yeah.
And even when you do contract work, there's something you're doing that you're supposed to be doing. But man, I tell you, when you retire, it's like an L-shaped ambush. You just walk right in because it seems like a great idea, but if you aren't prepared, it's gonna get you. And that's what
Frank,
I think.
you seem like you'd be a great advocate to kind of push that though, you know what I mean? Because for
Yeah,
one,
I ain't got the juice.
yeah, you do, man. I mean, 28 years, that's respectable and everything else. I mean, and you can speak for experience in terms of the length and time that you've been
Yeah,
in and then trying to adjust getting out. Because I mean, 4 years is hard for some folks.
right.
28 years or 20 plus years is got to be extremely hard for a lot of other folks because especially the rank that you guys eventually reach up to, right?
Yeah,
A lot of times it doesn't really translate to the civilian world. Like once you get out and you want to go get a job, you're not going to be the CEO or you're not going to be the manager. You might not be a supervisor right off start. You might be the guy starting off at the bottom and and so that kind of stuff is a hard pill to swallow for some.
yeah. You
And
know what my last job was?
what's that?
My last job, I was a corporate executive twice for 2 different companies. I was a vice president. And
Wow.
my last company, I was a vice president for a job ended really quick. So I had to find something. So I took a job with a company as a note taker in meetings. You talk about a
You're the
reality.
scribe, huh?
Yeah. And it was the funny part was they called me up after I sent my resume in, and the program manager and the assistant program manager called me. It's like, "Boy, we'd love to have you, but are you sure this is something you want to do? I mean, you're so overqualified." I said, "I need to do this. It's
Yeah.
it's it's not a matter of want. I want a job. I need to work." And so they brought me on, and you have a really appreciation for people who can do stuff like that once you get there. 'Cause I mean, they would have us do these meeting notes, and I would turn them in, and of course, I was a lot older than anybody else on the team too, and so they were kind of reluctant to write red all over my papers because they felt sorry for me because I was the oldest person in the group, and it's
Oh
like you're
gosh.
correcting your parents, and some of them I could have been their grandparents, but the I'm like, "No, tell me. If you don't say something, I'll never get it right." And so they'd sit down with me and, tell me, and they would show me their notes. It's like, my God, that's a skill. Those people can sit there and take notes and write it up in such a manner that it absolutely reflects everything that was going on. I mean, I never thought of it that way because, when we were in the military, you'd have a meeting and you grab Schmedlap and say, "Hey, take some notes. We can do an AAR. You got to write it up," and nobody cares. It's like because the
Yeah.
boss gets it, and then he looks at it and he says, I'm doing this," and he
Yeah.
and he does his. Then he gives it back to you, and you put it on a thing, and you send it out to everybody. Here's the notes from the meeting. But that is not the way it's supposed to work. And it was nice because one of the things I told them is, my entire working life, I've been in charge of stuff. I don't want to be in charge. I just want to do my part. And I don't know. Maybe that was a good way to transition into retirement. But um,
You were just kind of
again,
at that level. You were just like, you just want to do something. You don't
oh
got
yeah,
to be the boss. You just want to actually just be part of a
Well,
team and some make a difference, huh?
they wanted me to stay. And I remember one day I was getting in a car and I'd have to drive into work. So I was driving from West Virginia to Falls Church area in Virginia. And it was about a 2-hour drive each way.
Wow, yeah.
And I remember one morning getting up to go into work.
Pretty
And,
did you have to get up pretty early and stuff like that as well, or?
oh yeah, geez, I
Yeah.
was out the door about 5:15, 5:30 because I had
Oh,
to be
yeah.
there by 7:30. So I remember one day getting up and we had just gotten a new lab puppy. And my wife was outside with dogs. We had 4, counting the puppy. And she's playing with the puppy as I'm backing out of the driveway. And it just caught me that day. It's like, no, I want to do that. So I went in and told them I was going to resign and retire. And they spent the next week or so trying to change my mind.
Convince
But
you, right?
I just lost the steam. I got tired of driving in and being there. And at that time, I wasn't a note taker anymore. I was doing acquisition stuff.
Mm.
So that wasn't an area that I had a huge amount of experience in. So it was like, I'm
And
not
so
going to
were you
miss.
ready this time? Were you absolutely ready this time to
I was ready to retire, but I was not ready with retirement. If you can
Gotcha.
follow that, it's kind of like I didn't want to work anymore. I mean, I was 63 years old, so I could draw Social Security, and but I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought retirement was a thing to do, and it's not. And that's what I was saying before. With guys like us, we need a purpose. We got to maintain that purpose, whatever it is, whatever we're going to work on. That's our purpose.
Yeah.
And you just can't sit. And once you sit and you stop trying to do things, that's when the bad stuff happens.
Yeah,
And
that's a fact, man.
but you got to be ready to focus. And that's why I was saying with it, if the VA had something, and it really couldn't be the challenge that I was on, because honestly, that was a real backbreaker. I almost said something else, but you
You're
know what I
allowed
was
to say what you want on here, man. We're veterans, and this is no little kid show.
it busted my ass every day. That's why I got this shirt. And I said, the SEALs had a point there. The only easy day was yesterday. That's because it's over.
Yeah, right.
So I wear this when I go to the gym, but my job now, my purpose is to try to do the things I can to speak with other veterans, be associated with veteran groups, and just tell them, it doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter what you want to focus on. Have something that gives you a purpose. And once you stop looking and once you stop trying to have a purpose, that's a bad thing. And I firmly believe that the only way we're going to fix this thing is if we all of us veterans get involved. So you just can't sit by on the sidelines and try to watch others try to cope with it. We have too many veterans that can cope with it to not be able to help the ones that are having issues.
100%.
So
That's a fact. And I like what
my
you're
other
saying right there. That's that's a very valid point. Um, because sometimes when you're doing good, you don't seem to think about the ones that are really struggling, because you're
yeah,
just in that moment and you're trying to,
yeah,
but we do got to think about that, and when you're just because you're doing good doesn't mean others aren't, right?
yeah,
And we do got to look out for our brothers and sisters. When we all swore in, at least for me, I took a lifetime oath
Right.
And the way that I see it is after my service is done, now it's about trying to help others, and wherever you can help, you don't have to be great at something, right? I mean, you could just be okay and help in wherever areas that you are. Like, I started the podcast, and this is my way of trying to help, bringing on other veterans, letting them tell their stories, let them talk about what they've been through and what great things they're doing today, and
Right.
trying to make that avenue so people feel comfortable to talk about stuff,
Yeah.
because we do compartmentalize all our stuff and we hold it in at times, and we want to try to, act like, oh yeah, yeah, but there's those times that we do need to let people know, hey man, we're human beings, we go through things as well. Yes, we were trained to be desensitized, whatever. But that doesn't mean we're not human beings, right?
It's like I was talking about the podcast that you had on recently was Scotty Frazier.
Yeah.
My issues weren't combat related. My issues were the fact that I didn't go. And I didn't not go because I chose not to go. I volunteered like 5 or 6 different times to go overseas. And for some reason, there was always something I couldn't go.
And
So,
Frank, life could have been different for
oh
you.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, you could be in a different state of mind. You could be in a different world today had
Yep.
your life went that way. Took that left. Um,
Right.
I
But
just had
what
a
I'm
past guest. He went through the kind of the same thing. Didn't was wanted to deploy, didn't deploy, um, and then you have to go through those thoughts when you don't. As to like you wish you did, but then there's probably others that will be like, hey man, it's probably better, you didn't, because mentally and all that stuff, you don't have to
well,
live with this.
well, that's one of the reasons why we need to check on everybody
Right.
because you see a guy like me, I didn't deploy. There was several campaigns that I could have went to had they given me orders. But even I survivor's guilt is not
Yep.
just applied to the battlefield.
100%.
And so every veteran needs to be connected to other folks,
100%.
regardless. Because
Yep.
people look at me and they would think, well, why would you have any problems? You didn't go anywhere. I mean, that's not it. It's all part of being a veteran and
Absolutely.
and
And
not
it doesn't
feeling
even
like,
matter your MOS or your job,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I've always, that's something I say. Uh, Everybody goes through something, even the people
Yep,
on the stateside, because they're still supporting something overseas
yep.
and they're going through things over here. And everybody goes through something at some degree. And like you said, a lot of people don't put that into account, the psychological part of not being deployed when others
Yep.
do.
'Cause we have
A lot of people never actually take that into account because they don't really think, "Ah, he didn't get deployed." But there's that flip side, you know what I mean? That, like you just said, and I think that that's great that we're talking about this because that way a lot more people could come to light for others and be like, "Oh, wait, I never really
well,
thought about it like that."
the thing about, having issues, of course, it's more likely for folks who are in combat.
Right.
I I mean, my God, the stuff that they went through and
It's a different element, I mean,
yeah,
obviously, there's different
yeah.
elements to their mental what they're going through, but it's never, mental health is there's never like, like I don't really know how to put it, but mental health is not discriminatory. It doesn't matter. Basically, at any point, it could affect you.
Right,
Um,
that's why I say purpose.
right.
Everybody needs when they're out, when they're doing other things, they need to feel like they have a purpose. And it has nothing to do with what you saw, what you did, um, wounded, not wounded. All veterans, you need to have a purpose for what you're here for. And once you lose that, It doesn't really, I mean, the strongest people you ever know will have issues.
It's 100%.
And I've lost several of my classmates over it, and it just tears your heart right out, because I'm older than a lot of my classmates, because I was enlisted first. And you know, I to outlive guys that I've known for 35, 40 years because they have some hidden issue that they couldn't get over. I mean, it can't be happening any longer. It's got to be fixed.
It's a hard pill to swallow, man. And
And
the the sad part about it is that 22 a day number has been marketed for years now, a
I don't
couple
know what it
years.
is anymore.
But I don't think the number is even 22. But that's the sad part about it, is we've been sitting here marketing and saying 22 a day, 22 a day, yet the numbers happen to go the other way. It's not going down. You know what I mean? And it's hard. It's a hard thing for veterans. I mean, even if I don't even know the person,
Right.
but when I hear the news come down range that one of our brothers or sisters took their life
Yeah.
by their own hand,
Yeah.
it really hurts. It takes a toll, because I know they have a family. I know they have people out there that genuinely cared, but they thought no one did. And I'm a person that doesn't even know them, and it affects me, and it hurts me, because they're one of my brothers or one of my sisters, and I hold them all very sacred and very close to me. No matter what branch of service, no matter what job, whether they went, and deployed, whether they stayed back, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that they took an oath and
Right.
did something that not a lot of people have the goal or the balls to do,
I mean,
and serve our
I could
country.
do a whole nother podcast on that one, but
Absolutely. 100%. We can probably keep going. But
uh,
let's kind of get more into what your purpose is, and what you have found a passion in this new book that you wrote, that just dropped out in December 2023.
yeah.
So let's talk more about that.
My book, in a nutshell, it's a story about two Iraqi American soldiers who joined the army under special programs to utilize their um, language and cultural experience. Both these individuals were born in Iraq and came to the States. The book basically is a story of those two and what they're doing, and they finally meet up in Iraq, and it's not a great ending for one of them, but it's really a story of immigrants. It's an immigrant story, and a lot of people, when they talk about it, they say it's a military story about two soldiers in Iraq. It's really about the power of immigrants in our country.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that program that I started where we recruited over 1,500 people into that MOS. And it started out as something in the inactive ready reserve, and it progressed to an actual MOS, military occupational specialty in the Army. And it lasted quite a while, and then the proponent decided that they wanted some other units, so they disbanded. And I actually had a field grade officer once tell me, well, of course we're going to get rid of it. What are you going to do with these people when we're not in Iraq anymore? It's like there's over 20 countries in the world that speak Arabic, and most of them aren't really all that calm and collected, and they're all kind of unstable. I mean, it's just sad that somebody in the intelligence branch would think that way. But anyways, We won an award. We were claimed as the best military book in 2023 by the International Impact Book Awards, and I'm going out
Outstanding.
in March to pick up my award in Phoenix.
Oh man, that's outstanding.
Yeah,
Congrats, Frank.
I never realized that the hardest part of writing a book would come after you finished writing it. But
I don't think you're the only author that I've had on that's kind of said
yeah,
that.
it's like selling cars. I sold cars for 3 years on the weekends, and I really enjoyed selling cars. I was good at it.
Right.
But man, especially if you're a new author, you got to really be aggressive and get in there and kick some doors in. Um, I'm hoping that I'll be doing a lot more. I've done 2 book signings already, and I'm working on some other ones, but I'm at a point now where I've taken random people and just mailed them a book and say, "Here, you don't owe me anything, just read it, and if you think it's good, tell someone about it," because that's turning out to be the best way to let people know.
So something that I've heard in the author world is definitely leave a review.
Oh, yeah.
Reviews are very huge to
Yeah.
the author, and they let them know. Let them know how the book is. That's what they want to
Yeah.
hear. They need to know that, and it also helps get that
Now
book out.
one of the things I'm really proud of, there's a company called Kirkus, and they're a professional reviewing company, and you have to pay them to get your book reviewed, and a lot of times the reviews aren't all positive,
Mm.
and they tell you that up front. They're going to be honest. They're going to review it, and I got a positive review from them for the book, and I'm hoping that will help, push it a little bit. But honestly, I wrote this as a tribute to the 1,500 plus people who joined the program, and a lot of people don't know there was that program, and
No.
it's not like the cold code talkers of World War II. I mean, it's not
Right.
that, but it was a good program, and I also have some people who were in and got a bad soldier, and it's like it's an MOS. You're not going to have all good. You're not going to have all bad. I mean, I apologize that the guy that you got didn't do as great a job as you thought he or she should, but
Right.
it's an MOS. And then the other funny thing, and I'll kind of leave it there, is when we started the program, um, the military entrance processing folks demanded that they be given an ASVAB test. And then when they took the test and they scored low, everybody tried to say, "Oh, these people aren't smart." It's like, wait a second. Who's not smart? The person who wants to give them a test not in their native language and think the
Right.
results are correct, or the person who takes the test and does as good as they can, even though that isn't their first language. It's like these people, I mean, I had people join that were degreed peoples. They were professionals. And sometimes you just have to shake your head and say at the system and say, "My God." And they say, "Oh, we'll translate the test into their language." And I said, "It's culturally not correct. I mean, you're talking about doing math, not in the metric system. You're talking about doing questions about football fields, and it's not even the same thing. Football field is soccer." It's like,
No, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of countries don't operate to the way that we tell time.
oh yeah,
A lot of them are based off military time. Um, there, there's just so many differences that that's the hard part in America. That's all we know. but there's a whole other world, and that's the hard part. We always think, oh, everybody knows what we know, right? It's like, no.
After I had been in this group for about 3 or 4 months, I mean, you're the only military guy. You start trying to, you don't try, but you just feel like you have to kind of take control.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I didn't have any problem. What do I care? So to motivate the rest of the people in the group, most of whom outranked me because they were higher level civilians, I bought everybody a shirt, and it says, "I don't give a rat's ass." A picture of a rat, a picture of an ass, and I gave them all a shirt. They said, "What's this?" And I said, "We're going to come up against a lot of stuff that people are going to say, oh, you can't do that. Bullshit. We're going to do it, but we're going to figure out how to do it and how to do it right without getting stuck in the, oh, you can't do that."
Right.
And we did. And, one of the things I was most proud of is I'm one of the few guys that have built an MOS from scratch. I mean, we had a something to kind of model it off of a little bit. But man, I did everything from site critical tasks, site selection boards, and writing up the skill level identifiers. And we had a lot of contractors working with us. God bless them.
Well,
I
you
love them
definitely
all.
leaving a mark in the history books, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, at some point in time, they're gonna reflect back and see how critical this was.
Well, I
You know,
just facilitated it. I wish I could get all those great Americans, and I say Americans, they're not Iraqi Americans, they're Americans. They chose to be here and they love this country. And I'd love to get them all in one place at one time and just thank them in person again. I tried to go to all the graduations for their AIT and shake hands, but and we had one young individual got wounded in action over there, and he was in Walter Reed, and I remember going to his bedside and pinning a Purple Heart on his sheet.
wow.
Just oh, and we had another guy who he was attached to a special forces unit, and they wrote back and said how great it was to have him, but we needed to figure out a way to train him so that they don't want to be the first one through the door all the time. He said,
Oh man.
"You can't be the first one through. You need to come in later because we can't
Right?
afford."
Yeah. You're like the very last guy that should be in.
And of course, we had some people that, like I said, they just weren't that good. And unfortunately, I had one person that um, broke the rules and got himself killed, and some other folks as well trying to look for him. It's just,
Gosh. Yeah, that's the tough part. And that's we tend to always sometimes focus on the negative part versus the one damn thing that you could go wrong.
what do they
We focus
say?
on that versus the 300 things we all did right as a unit.
One off shit takes away 1,000 attaboys.
There you go. I
Yeah.
like that one. I think Frank needs to come up with his own shirt, man. He's the shirt guy.
Yeah, man. I got the way well, I can't say. I want
You
people to
probably
read
walk
my book.
around and just have people
Yeah, all that program I was in, I lost over 30 pounds and took about 4 inches off my waist and added 5 inches on my biceps.
Man, outstanding. Look at you over there.
Well, the best thing is it's a lifestyle change too. So I did that and started in January 1st last year and finished it in March. And I've been keeping with it the entire time. It's just,
Look at Frank. He's in better shape than when he was enlisted the whole 28 years now. They're like, gosh, dang it, Frank.
yeah, I'm bench pressing 275 now.
Damn, man. Look at you.
Yeah,
Shoot. All right.
yeah.
You ain't messing around now.
That's again, all goes back to purpose. If your purpose is going to the gym and staying in shape, then do it.
Right.
But don't sit and not do anything. That's just that'll
Not
get
good
you.
for anything. Not good for the
No.
mental health. Not good for the physical.
No.
You know, it is important. That is a big thing. So let's talk about where people can find your book. I know that you can definitely pick it up here at www.ballastbooks.com.
Yep.
That's BALLASTBOOKS.com for all the people listening on just the audio side. And it's called Of Vital Interest, and that is Frank Demith. But is there any other do you have it on Amazon, or
It's
is it all over the place?
Amazon. You can get it online. It's not in any bookstores yet. I filed to try to get it into Books A Million stores. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's even on Walmart. So
Dang, okay.
you can order it online from Walmart. And the thing that'll be funny to me one day if I walk in and I see it on a shelf.
Right? That no,
There,
man, that you'll be wow.
well,
You
yeah,
just
it's
gotta
like that.
go buy a
This,
copy just cause.
that's like the Steve Martin movie where he sees his name in the phone book. It's like, yeah, shithead. Look, we're somebody. We're in the phone book. Oh, shithead was a little dog. That's not.
Yeah, right. Oh
Stay away from
man.
those oil cans. They're defective.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk about your experiences, you know, what you got going on. And like I said, I really appreciate it. And you're welcome to come back on and talk anytime you want to come on and have anything you want to talk about. But is there any I forgot anything you would like to say to any listeners out there?
The only thing I'll say is the music world and our world, veterans in our country, lost an amazing individual. And God bless Toby Keith, and he'll for always be a hero of us veterans. It's just so sad.
Very patriotic, and I mean, he even wrote a couple songs. One of them was about calling the Marines. But yeah, definitely we lost a legend and an iconic guy. And
And if you ever want to
rest in
watch
peace.
something that'll make the strongest man, strongest woman tear up, watch on YouTube the video of him singing "Don't Let the Old Man In" at the award show.
Mm,
My God, that's just
probably a little early for people to watch that now, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, man. Yeah. But once again, Frank, I do appreciate you coming on, brother. And I wish the best of luck to you. And you know what? You got any future endeavors? You gonna write another book?
I'm halfway through the second book. It's going to be at least a three book series, a
Okay.
trilogy.
Shoot. Nice. All right. Outstanding. Well,
Sometime
people
this
will have to be
summer.
looking out there. All right. Nice. Okay. Cool. And all right, man. Well, thanks once again, and I hope you have an amazing day, amazing week, and don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure after kicking it. All right, brother.
Same to you, brother. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Frank. All right, friends and fam. Well, that wraps up another great interview. Please go out there, check out Frank, and check out his book. You know, he's an awesome guy. 28 years, very respectable. You know, go out there, check out the book Of Vital Interest by Frank Demith. And a little bit about the book right here. Definitely something you guys want to go check out. Go give them some support. Once again, I hope you guys all have an amazing day. Don't let it kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time. Arr.